Hey everyone, Emily with Bob's Watches. Welcome to another buying guide. In this video, we're talking all about the Rolex Explorer and discussing some of the key features about Rolex's original sports watch. Also, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on all of our latest videos. First launched in 1953 to celebrate mankind's first successful summit of Mount Everest, the Explorer was Rolex's very first sports watch, and it laid the groundwork for the range of legendary tool watches that would follow, such as the Submariner, Sea Dweller, and Milgauss. Up until this point, Rolex had built a reputation for building durable and highly water-resistant timepieces. However, none of them were built to be outright sports watches. Unlike modern sports watches that often include specific features or complications for their intended environment or activity, the original Rolex Explorer was just a robust, time-only watch designed with legibility and durability in mind. In truth, Rolex had more or less been producing these watches in the form of their Oyster Perpetual series for a number of years, and models such as reference 6098 and 6298 are often considered to be pre-Explorer watches, and some of them even have the Explorer name on their dials. The first Explorer references to have black 369 dials and establish much of the design cues that now define the collection are the reference 6150 and the 6350. However, again, not all of these watches featured the Explorer name. These models were quickly replaced by reference 6610, which further established the design of the Explorer that we know and love today. By the time the reference 6610 was released, the vast majority of its core design was set. The black gilt dial featured large luminous hour markers with the obligatory 369 Arabic numerals. The Explorer name on the dial was present and correct, as were the Mercedes-style hands, although a certain amount of variation exists among these dials, and you can even find some extremely rare examples with depth ratings printed in red. Despite the variation in number of early Explorer references, Rolex would release the reference 1016 in 1959, which would go on to become the longest-running model from the collection's history. Like the reference 6610, the Explorer 1016 featured a 36mm stainless steel case, fitted with a thick acrylic crystal, a steel Oyster bracelet, and a black gilt dial. Internally, the movement was updated from the caliber 1030 to the caliber 1560, and then later 1570 movements. However, it retained its time-only functionality. While the first reference 1016 watches were fitted with glossy gilt dials, Rolex made the switch to matte dials around 1967, so later era 1016 Explorers will have matte black dials with white text. It's also worth noting that in addition to gilt versus matte dials, there are also very small differences between 1016 Explorer dials, particularly among the early iterations. For example, the earliest gilt Explorer dials will feature radium rather than tritium lume, along with chapter ring markings. The reference 1016 Explorer would remain in production for about 30 years, finally getting replaced in 1989 by the reference 14270. Although the Explorer remained a 36mm time-only watch with a black dial, virtually everything else about it had been changed. Internally, it had the new caliber 3000 movement, and the acrylic crystal of its predecessor had been replaced by one made from flat, scratch-resistant sapphire. Additionally, rather than having a matte dial, the reference 14270 was fitted with a gloss black dial with white text and applied 18-karat white gold hour markers filled with lume. By 2001, Rolex had replaced the reference 14270 with reference 114270, and although the new model was largely identical to its predecessor, it did feature the upgraded caliber 3130 movement and later a bracelet with solid end links. Beyond the new movement and revised bracelet, the reference 114270 was largely the same watch, still featuring a 36mm stainless steel case, sapphire crystal, and a gloss black dial with applied white gold hour markers. However, although the dial of the reference 114270 Explorer was of the same style as its predecessors, it was finished with super luminova rather than the tritium or luminova like before. Production of the reference 114270 would last up until 2010, when Rolex would replace it with the new reference 214270. While the watch did see an update in movement to the caliber 3132, the biggest update to accompany this new Explorer generation was its larger 39mm case. Since the very beginning of the Rolex Explorer, it had always had a 36mm case diameter, so the new larger case of the reference 214270 marked the most significant update to the collection in its entire half-century plus history. To accompany its larger case, Rolex also fitted the reference 214270 Explorer with a redesigned Oyster bracelet that featured completely solid links and a more substantial machined Oyster lock safety clasp. While the core style of the dial remained unchanged, it was still black with white text and applied white gold hour markers. The larger size of the watch necessitated a new dial. Consequently, the one found in the reference 214270 is larger, bolder, and overall more modern looking than its 36mm predecessors, and also features Rolex's blue glowing chromolite for its luminescence. With that in mind, the Rolex Explorer 214270 that first was launched in 2010 is not the exact same as the one that Rolex sells today, despite having the exact same reference number. Originally, the dial of the reference 214270 Explorer featured Arabic 369 numerals with fully polished white gold surfaces. However, in 2016, Rolex updated the dial of the reference 214270 to feature Arabic numerals that were filled in with chromolite lume to match the rest of the dial. Additionally, along with the update to the dial design, the hands of the reference 214270 Explorer also received a small update, with the minute hand becoming slightly longer to be more proportional with the new larger dial design. Due to these small differences between early and current production reference 214270 watches, collectors often distinguish them as Mark I and Mark II. The early style with solid white gold Arabic numerals in short minute hands are known as Mark I, while the Mark II designation corresponds to the current version with luminous Arabic numerals in a long minute hand. As far as pricing, the current production reference 214270 Explorer retails for $6,550. However, like all stainless steel sports Rolex watches, the secondary market price of the Explorer is higher than its original retail value, with most examples trading hands for around $7,000 to $8,000 on the open market. Without a doubt, the most expensive Rolex Explorer watches are the vintage models, such as the reference 6610 and 1016, particularly those with gilt dials. Matte dial reference 1016 watches start out at around $10,000. However, plan on spending around 2 to 3 times that, should you want a nice example fitted with a gilt dial. The overall design of the Explorer has changed less than arguably any other Rolex sports model, and regardless of whether you go for a vintage or modern reference, you'll be getting a true industry classic and Rolex's original professional series watch. For more information on Rolex's original sports watch, be sure to check out our Rolex Explorer Ultimate Buying Guide, and you can find the link for that in the description below. Thanks for watching our buying guide on the Rolex Explorer. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on all of our latest video content.